from the blackest corners of your mind, they call, pulling you deep into shadow, twisting your senses, keeping you from sleep. It's time to face your darkest fears. This is Tales to Terrify. Good evening, children of the night, and welcome. Tonight we have a pair of tales for you about a deadly struggle between nature and nurture and a fight to defend a way of life. Our first story for the evening comes from Rhiannon Rasmussen. Rhiannon Rasmussen is an American horror and dark fantasy author and illustrator interested in monstrosity and the persistence of hope. Rhiannon's fiction has appeared in publications including Lightspeed Magazine, Diabolical Plots, and Evil in Technicolor. Children of the Night, join me for Rhiannon Rasmussen's The Lives of Scavengers, first published in Your Body Is Not Your Body by Tenebrous Press, May 2022.
I was born from your grave into this sunless world. I clawed my way out of cold earth with curled hands, my mouth filled with worms, and my nails stained petrichor. The rot was the warmth left behind me. For a long time, this was what I knew there was of life. I ate the worms and chewed the bones to strengthen my jaws, and I drank the dew which pooled on the stone of the funeral yards. Whether it was a good life or bad did not concern me. When others came to my graveyard, I lurked behind the stones and studied them. I dared not approach, and in a similar manner, those who saw me looked away. I understood that they were afraid. Mistakenly, I assumed it was of me. Now I understand they averted their eyes to avert their shame. That which is not acknowledged is no one's responsibility. This was the way of the Undercity, ignored by the city above. The first time someone met my eyes, it was a person dressed in the plump rose of a worm's belly. The long hair of her head hung limp like mine, though it was tucked into a lace veil. Later, I learned rose was the color of mourning, of woman's mourning. Men mourned in other colors. The woman met my eyes through her veil. Her expression did not change. She did not look away. I fled back to my hole of worms and dew. To have been seen frightened me. The next candle's mark, she returned with rinds of bread and cheese. She sat with her food next to her until I approached and snatched the food away. The texture was more pleasant to chew than the bursting worms. It became our routine over the course of several days. She came to my yard with bread and patience until I came so close as to sit with her. As I chewed, she spoke. "I am called Voyeri," she said. "I am a widow, so time is of no import to me. I have more of it than I please." My mouth full, I did not answer. Do you know from whence you came? I swallowed. Here. Behind her veil, her black eyes caught the lantern light. Ah, I heard the grave children were born with speech, but the spheres have not moved to grant us any in decades. That is how you were left ignored. A shame. But Voyeri is here for you. This meant nothing to me. I took more of the cheese rind. I enjoyed the chew between my molars. Do you know how you came to be? Of the spheres and the saints? No. She told me of the 3 saints of decay, who governed the paths of those such as me, the vulture, the hyena, and the scarab. All were important, she said. Only one was to be feared. She looked at my teeth, and she told me which sphere I was governed by. I snapped my teeth together. Do you fear me? No, she said, and I could tell she spoke the truth in her kind words. She was not afraid, though she always wore the veil. Even the dim throbbing of lanterns was difficult for her eyes. She returned daily for a fortnight. At the end of that passage, when she saw how close I dared sit near her, she asked me if I wished to learn what life was like without dirt as a second skin. That was the manner in which I, the grave child, became instead the widow Voyeri's child. The name she bestowed upon me was Make, heir of misfortune. I was proud, but jealous when I learned that I was not the first of her children, nor the only stray. One such son, Ivan, the eldest, came to her house often and fixed what was broken: her bench, her pantry shelf, her bathing bucket. I did not like him. He did not like me. He mocked my name. I sat in the corner when he visited and bared my teeth at him. He bared his teeth back, and Voyeri laughed and said we were alike. She spoke proudly of his accomplishments: a night watch in the darkest gloom, a handyman. He stood against the dark and did not flinch even in the hour when the veins of the city above flowed too thick and the city's blood dripped down to the streets of our lightless slum. Brave, she said. Clever. Not clever enough to stand in the cover and keep his night hat unstained, I thought. And what he fixed was not fixed long. The bench slouched, the pantry mouldered, the bucket leaked. He left with her change, her bread, her gratitude, more than the worth of a bench a bucket could well serve as. Of his own earnings he did not give, though he bragged of them before her, and she was proud. He asked for her last savings in the rose-colored bag she tucked into the back of the cabinets, and she laughed at that, too. But who was I to note such a thing? I had come from dirt. I knew only how to break, not to mend. About this, Voyeri was patient and kind. She had time, she told me. She had nothing to give but time. Voyeri was poor, but to me our meager food was a feast. She was not much learned, but to my ears her scraps of knowledge were encompassing. I learned quickly. Among the lessons, I learned that what she had to give was not enough for me. The hunger of the grave, the redness of my belly, and the hunger of my saint grew and gnawed at me, and I became hollow with it. My motions were rote, and my teeth were razors. I tried to be gentle, but in my hands pots and buckets warped or shattered. I wished to be content, but I was not. She knew, and it hurt us both. She was often short with me. Her patience was not drawn from such a deep well as time. I watched Voyeri closely, even when we argued, to learn from her. Her kindness, to me, seemed weak, a concession of territory. When she shouted, I knew she was treating me as an equal, and I tried to repair and repay and show her the patience she had shown me. When she spoke softly and called in Ivan to mend what I had destroyed, I knew she was giving in. And to see him speak softly to her and smile pityingly at me and leave with whatever his eyes fell on enraged me. I left her house when she treated me as such, knowing and hating that she often turned to Ivan in my absence. What I turned to in her absence was the grave. Your grave I could find by scent alone, and it was gouged with words. I sat by it in silence, and anger I could not put full thoughts to. Neither the widow nor I knew letters, so I did not puzzle out your name. Perhaps this was better. An image can be admired wholly. To know a man wholly is to know betrayal. Here I will not mince. What followed was not the fault of Voyeri. None could have provided enough for me. Her only fault was trust. In that afternoon my hunger overcame me, and in hollow-bellied anger I threw the crooked bench into the pantry shelf to break them both of their emptiness. Voyeri cried. I left when she spoke of Ivan. Ivan who helped and did not hurt her, unlike her troubled child. I paced in the graveyard among my kin, the rot and the bones, and I touched the stones and I considered my anger. I was troubled, yes. My efforts were my best, and my best was often poor. I understood that I was not a sufficient child, but I did not lie. I did not take, and I did not understand why she saw no difference between myself and my hunger and Ivan and his greed. After a day alone, I returned, and the bench was fixed and the pantry bare. Voyeri bade me search for her savings in their rose-colored bag. Her eyesight was poor. She had misplaced the money. We overturned the house. The money was not found. With disgust, I said Ivan had taken it. His eyes had fallen on it many times. She said Ivan had not, and condemned me for speaking ill of my brother, though he was no brother of mine. I went searching for him. I had not gone much into the city, but I knew Ivan's name. I knew what he spoke of. And overnight I found him intoxicated, hot-faced and penniless, draped in a broken chair in the filthy back room of a smoky building. I swore at him and cursed his name and demanded what he had stolen. "What will a grave child and a hag do with money?" He mocked and clapped his hands, while the friends his mother's stolen money had bought him laughed. "Buy needles and leeches? Why not give, gamble, enjoy life in this sorry hole?" Not that he called it a hole, or myself what I was, but that he called Voyeri a hag. I had no use for words. I lunged and clawed and bit him, and from his jacket, while he shouted and beat at me, I wrested the rose-colored bag the coins had been in. I could not conceive of losing the sum, but he had spent it with frivolity on cards and spinning tops. Later, I would learn it was an easy sum to lose. But to Voyeri and I, it had been the wealth of the world. Ivan's friends of convenience threw me onto the street. Ivan laughed with drunken bluster and crowed his victory as I retreated. I returned, bruised, to Voyeri, with the empty bag. She blamed me. I wailed. I shrieked. I offered to work. None would have me. I offered to steal. Voyeri shouted that stolen coin would curse us both. Had it cursed Ivan? I asked. He seemed well. He brought us dry rinds and spotted cheese. How kind. No food became less. My hollowness turned inside out. I chewed the furniture to fill myself with splinters. I begged on the street. Voyeri did the odd jobs she could for old food from the city above. All our efforts were not enough. The food was hard on her and gave her pain. I dug and ate worms from the street and watched Voyeri grow slower much too quickly. Ivan came smugly by with old bread and offered to take the house from Voyeri. She could not take care of it, nor of him or me. This was true. I asked him to take her in without me. She cried. As though I had never bit him, he smiled kindly and with pity and patted me on the head. On him I smelled guilt. "Unkempt grave child," he said. "Of course I will care for my own mother." To her he spoke softly, and in that moment I saw the grace Voyeri saw in him, and I was glad. Of course he would help his mother. Even a rotten man was moved by guilt. That I would be in the street, and Voyeri with her son who returned for her, it was enough. I helped her gather things, some clothes, and Ivan said he would be back for the rest. Her needles, her darning gourd, the profession that until now had fed her. He asked me to finish gathering them while he was gone. Yet some small seed of mistrust bade me trail them. They walked towards his house, and past it, towards the end of town, away from the graveyard, and away from the shadow of the highest sphere, out of the sheltering wings of the St. Ossifrage of the city above. Further, they walked from the central sphere to the realm of the sphere below, the farmers' wetlands, where lived the forgotten, the marshes, the leeches, the mosquitoes, and the abandoned. St. Scarab Beetle's sphere of shit, the beginning and the end of life. At the edge of a field slumped a mouldering house, the poorhouse, stinking of mildew and rot. Our hut had been cleaner. Our hut had not been left to curl in upon itself. The walls did not mask the thin sound of sobs from my saint's ears. There was no care in this place. It was where people were left to be buried without remembrance. Voyeri knew. Voyeri clapped her hand on her son's back and went through the fence willingly, as though this was her place. I followed them to the gate. I watched them embrace, and Ivan kissed her on each soft cheek. He promised to visit. He promised to bring her the last of her work. He promised not to forget her. In his gait as he turned away, I saw the spring of a man freed of a burden. I heard the laugh he made at the gambling table. I waited for him to turn the corner on the marsh road, out of sight of the windows of the poorhouse. I killed him. I killed him as a cat does. I was not kind. I felt my saint within me as I ate of his chest and belly, and I was filled. The remains I sunk into the marsh fields, so that he might have some use in death as he had not in life. In that moment, watching the body sink into the mud, I was satisfied. My hunger and my anger. It was a fleeting satisfaction. Voyeri's spinning work I bundled and left at the gate of the poorhouse for her. Not long after, I heard she had died of her grief. Her work did not sustain her through the loss and my betrayal. And I knew it was a betrayal, but that had not stopped me. The council of the city above would condemn us both, and from their council our blood would pass down to the grave in the hour of blood. But I bore no guilt. I returned to the graveyard and cleaned my hands and mourned there. I mourned, but I did not die. Ivan and Voyeri both were gone, one before the other, though to me it felt they had parted the other way around. Their passing swallowed each other in my memory, one after the other, always, without closure. One I thought would bring me happiness, the other sorrow. But Ivan's passing brought me sorrow as well, and for a long time I lingered on it. I watched in the yard, and each in the color of rose I searched for the manners of Voyeri, or the memory of Voyeri. When at last I understood I would not find her in another, I grew weary of mourning Voyeri in every shadow. Their end was death, but not my death. Mosquito wives, ticks and leeches, death feeders who snap bones in their teeth. They came and went from my yard. So did I go, first in their paths, and then on my own to the city above. I traveled far. I passed through the Ossifrage's council of blood without guilt, and further still. My hunger never lessened. Whether I had done ill did not concern me, but when I could, I tried to do good, as had been done for me. And after many years of this, at last I understood what Voyeri meant when she told me she had only time to give. To her memory I would offer gratitude, to her child, patience, to her body, rest, and the knowledge that the space she resided in was hers to have. Never should she have had to fold herself away. Through all of this, you, the body of whom I was born of, I never thought of you at all.
That was Rhiannon Rasmussen's The Lives of Scavengers, as read by Krystal Hammond. Krystal Hammond is a narrator/writer, cancer survivor, and non-binary queer human. They grew up in rural North Carolina, nurtured by a steady diet of local Blackbeard legends and Confederate ghost stories. These nuggets of folktale and myth fostered a lifelong love of storytelling and all the drama that goes with it. They also have a master's degree in biological anthropology and adore ugly cats. Feel free to check out their narration website at krystalhammond.com or find them on Twitter at @thekmhammond. Thank you, Krystal. Our second tale tonight comes from J.V. Gachs. J.V. Gachs is a Spanish ESL horror writer currently living in Spain. Her debut novel, Epiphany, was published by Off Limits Press, and Interstellar Flight Press will publish her second novella, Spooky Lovers, in 2024. Obsessed with sudden death, ghosts, and bisexual characters, she always writes with a cat or two in her lap and a dog by her side. Listen with me, children of the night, to J.V. Gachs' San Juan Sowing, first published in Underland Arcana, September 2023.
I've spent the last 3 days next to Abuela's deathbed. This morning, her ragged breath finally stopped. Of all the hermanas, I was the one she chose as her heir, and so this was my duty. But I would have volunteered for it delightedly anyway, if only to make sure she endured a ghastly death. Each painful inhale, her fight for precious air, gave me peace. But denying her the poppy tea that could ease her passing, that truly delighted me. I sipped it calmly in front of her pleading eyes, taunting her with my smile, mocking her weeping. The woman who brought me and the hermanas to our knees when we were children. The one who never showed a shred of mercy in the face of our blood, of our suffering, who punished our bodies, was terrified of pain and death in her last hours. We are but tender flesh in the end, I suppose, even the ones who pretend their hearts are hard and cold as marble. I consumed no food other than the last bread from the last harvest, as delectable as it sounds. As I watched her drown in her own fluids, so the numbing the tea provided was more than welcome. No one else was allowed in, a precaution to prevent her spirit clinging to the wrong vessel. All that fucking nonsense worked in my benefit for once. I put my ear close to her still warm chest and hear nothing but the emptiness of death. I guess I'm queen of the hive now. Standing next to her corpse, I draw with my fingers her wrinkle-covered mouth, each a piece of the tale of 100 years of pursed lips and spite. The mouth I've feared is harmless now, dead meat. In the golden candlelight, the shadows of her room dance. I then caress mine, my skin covered with old scars, the memories of her hands stitching my lips together, shower over me like summer shimmering rain. Pain seeps into my bones. I admit the seams served their purpose that night, and so did the scars afterwards. They inspire equal parts terror, respect, and lust, depending on which eyes are looking at me. As the needle pierced my flesh, and the coppery taste of blood mingled with that of salty tears on my tongue, her blue eyes never once hesitated. Her wrinkled hands never trembled. I spit on the floor beside her body before leaving the room. "Let the girls in," I ordered the men guarding the door. "Abuela is dead." "Just in time for San Juan's festival," murmurs with satisfaction one of the padres, who sit waiting in the little parlor of the Casa Grande. "Así se dijo." "Así se dijo," repeat the others, pressing 2 fingers against their lips. A farewell kiss to the woman upon whose shoulders the community had once grown strong, who never admitted how weak it was now. She made sure we were protected from the outside world by the snow-peaked mountains, the forests where even expert rangers get lost, the deadly river that devoured animals and humans all the same. But she failed to see our biggest threat was already within ourselves. The padres stand up and approach me, respectfully. One by one they kiss me on the mouth, as is customary to greet the village matriarch. I recognize the taste of them all, and I despise them. These kisses are the first sign of the transition of power that will be completed tomorrow night. San Juan's Eve. The Sowing. This will be the first new cycle in 70 years. Some of the padres were children back then and barely remember Abuela's crowning ceremony. The whole community is more excited about the festival than they are upset about her death. It's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime event, something they will tell the children about for years to come. Outside the Casa Grande, June's sun scorches my eyes, accustomed to the gloom of the closed death room. The black-clad girls walking past me carrying white cloth, basins of water, honey, wax, and a clay urn look at me curiously out of the corner of their eyes. I am the subject of their dreams and nightmares. I'll be the abuela they will remember in their deathbeds. A mixture of excitement and fear clutches at their chests and colors their cheeks pink like bougainvillea. This is an honor for them, they have been told. I'm not going to call you abuela just so you know it, hermana. I turned, and Amelia is sitting on one of the stone benches in the porch of the Casa Grande. Her hair, once black and curly, is now sprinkled with gray hairs, and only soft waves remain of her crazy mane. But she is just as ravishing as ever. I've seen how all the padres look at her. Today she hasn't put on the patch covering her empty right eye socket. There is no longer any need. Abuela will no longer be offended by the consequences of her own laws. We can show our scars proudly now. They mean we survived. They mean we grow into the hermanas who saved the community from collapsing on itself. Amelia stands up, splitting a fig in half and offering me a piece. Go to hell, sis. You look good with a clear face. I smile, accepting the red, juicy flesh of the fruit before the sun and hunger make me faint. It'd never be a good omen, less so in front of the whole town stirring to prepare for funerals and San Juan's bonfire. It's warm and sweet. It tastes different now that she's gone. Come on, you need to get some rest. I killed a rooster for you this morning. The fire is on. She hesitated before mustering the courage to ask, is she really dead? Dead? Dead. Good, she replies, pulling another sweet fig out of her apron and splitting it so we can both clean the bile taste from what's coming next out of our mouths. Out with the old, in with the new. Así se dijo, I reply, and we both try to hide our nervous laughter from the rest of the town. I leave Amaya sleeping in the hermana's room for the last time. She must be exhausted after 3 days of confinement with the old damn dying abuela. The broth and roasted chicken I cooked for her will be her last meal until the old woman's honey-covered heart is served to her at the bonfire. As of tomorrow, Amaya will move into the Casa Grande and everyone will call her Abuela. Her every word will become law. Go figure. Padres following her around, memorizing, interpreting. So it was said. What a load of crap. It would be hilarious, though. Pity I won't get to see that. I sit outside the house, guarding her sleep, and peeling paves de mayo for tomorrow's feast. There's a certain stillness and joy to this morning. Abuela's death has lifted a weight from my chest. A crack in the clouds letting the sun in for the first time after years of darkness. There's hope for the future now, and I'm glad I'll be a part of the change. I inhale deeply, as if I had been holding my breath my whole life. Kids are allowed to play and roam free, while the adults prepare the funerals and the ceremony. Flower arrangements, lambs, cakes, all their busy bees' voices reach me, muffled and distant. I wonder which of those kids playing in the fields are mine. At least 3 must have survived. 4, maybe? I'm sure one died inside me. I couldn't feel it move for a couple of weeks before the pains. And at least another I didn't hear crying, but they might have just taken it away too soon for me to hear. I know the little girl with the pink dress and gap teeth is mine without a doubt. She is my spitting image. Sometimes I think she looks like Padre Tomás, but others I think I recognize Padre Bartolomé's gestures in her tiny face. I loathe them all, so I guess it's a good thing we don't get to know who's the father, so we can't blame their crimes on the children. It's already been 5 San Juan's bonfires since they put her inside me, and since her, I have never participated in the sowing again. Not as a madre, anyway. They took that one day of being called a mother from me because I almost died pushing her out of me. "You are a bad omen, one-eyed girl," Abuela had stated. "Yeah, like we are the problem, stupid old cow." Amaya saved me and tethered me to this world. She brought me back and gave me a purpose. Tomorrow we'll harvest the seeds I've spread ever since. The other hermanas told me Abuela tried to take her away from me after the birth, to keep her from healing me so she could nurture the newborns. She whipped her and threatened to disinherit her, but Amaya wouldn't budge. I believe that stubbornness was the main reason why Abuela chose her in the first place. The strong rock upon which we would build a new world. She was the only one whose lips had to be sewn together, whose body had to be contented when we were teens and newlyweds in the sowing. Amaya was a force of nature and remains so to this joyful day. My oldest will be 20 years old now. I want it to hurt if he's one of the padres this year, but the truth is, I don't feel a thing. He had it coming just like them, if so. If my firstborn is one of the hermanas, she will have already lived through at least 4 San Juan's bonfires. She might have been the one who died last year, or one of the punished ones because they produced malformed children. Each year the number grows. When that starts to happen with the dogs, we tie the bitches outside when they are in heat, so the wolves would take them and new blood would save the pack. But the padres are greedier than dogs here. I have no way of knowing if my oldest is one of the hermanas that sleeps in our room, or the ones that cook with us. Is she working in the fields? It's no difference. They are all mine, and yet none is. It takes a village to raise a child, so it was said. I have always suspected that what was said has changed over the course of the years. There is no way to prove it, of course. Writing is only permitted when it comes to keeping accounts and knowing how much wheat, how many goats, how many seeds. Actually, I seriously doubt that Abuela's abuela had any opinion about a hermana slipping a love letter between the clean laundry of another, so I'm sure she couldn't have clearly said the punishment for that should be to lose an eye. And yet, así se dijo was what the padres chanted like a mantra as they held me on my knees in front of Abuela's knife. The spring girls finally come out of the Casa Grande, the big old white building at the center of our community. Although no red color is distinguishable on their black wool robes, what is visible is how the previously dry clothes shine soaked now. Those poor kids can't really properly clean a chicken yet. How are they supposed to do a good job with an old fat goat? Whatever. So it was said, so you have just been butchered, Abuela. I wonder if they managed to take the heart out. Maybe Amaya will be having liver tomorrow instead. The thought makes me chuckle. Some of the girls have tiny blood flowers on their cheeks, and others have puffy, crying eyes. The smallest one, who carries the urn with the heart, has vomit-stained shoes. Her hands tremble so much that the clay urn sings against her rings. You thought it was going to be a fun ceremony when you walked in, didn't you? I carry the basket with Babes de Mayo in. Amaya is still asleep. I've seen the years change her body. The pregnancies, the breastfeeding, the passing of time. She's still the same girl whose smile I fell head over heels for. I slither inside the bed next to her. She turns around and embraces me. Her skin is warm, and she smells like sweat and poppy tea. Her heart beats peacefully. She kisses my forehead. I untie her gown and caress her breasts that have nurtured so many eager mouths. Out with the old, she murmurs. In with the new, I reply, while my fingers search for her warm sex under the sheets. I shiver under Amelia's touch. She's always known how to drive me wild or soothe my nerves. Her body and mine beat in sync. Bathing the new abuela is the privilege of the spring girls, not autumn barren ones, Padre Bartolomé said with a disgusted grin when he left our hermana's house with everything ready for my purifying bath before tonight's ceremony. I pulled this one out of death myself, just so she could serve me until the day I die. So I say now, I replied, feeling my new status fitting me like a glove. He swallowed his words and led us on our way. Amelia pressed her lips together, trying to suppress a laugh, but she let it roam free once we got to the springs. Naked in the cold water, letting the sun warm our shoulders, we make love as hermanas for the last time. Amelia tastes of figs and pepper. She's sweet and spicy, tender under my touch, fierce as a wolf when it comes to defending her cubs. All our cubs, our future. We sit together as she braids my hair with the ceremony flowers. Are you afraid? Amelia asks. I'm more excited than afraid. I feel like I've been waiting for tonight ever since she told me I would be her heir. I lick the scars on my lips. Tonight will be fun, don't you think? Just be careful out there and be back on time. Don't worry, Abuela, I have it all under control, she replies before kissing me. The whole town gathers around the bonfire, waiting for me to light the fire to start San Juan's festival. The children are asleep in their beds, or spying from the windows as we used to do. The spring girls put the red wool robe over my naked body. They draw 2 red stripes of lamb blood from my eyes to my chin. Blood tears for the old world that fire will devour tonight. One of them places a white clay bowl full of the same blood in front of me. I dip my feet, then my hands. It's cold, sticky already. Its rotten stink will cling to my skin for days. I got a glimpse of myself in the mirrors of Casa Grande's hall. I've truly become a goddess, beautiful, but terrible, yet fair. The spring girls open the doors. The dim light of the dusk fills the hall. I close my eyes and breathe in the last seconds of my old self. Once I move, there would be no turning back. My blood-stained footprints on the white cloth leading to the bonfire will be the first signs of the new dawn. I would trust Amelia with my life. I've entrusted her with our future. It all begins with this first step. I walk out, and the hermanas in black robes start their singing the danza prima, accompanied by their borons and tambourines. The padres and the madres, in white ceremonial dresses, holding each other by their pinky fingers, start dancing in a circle around the unburned bonfire. They'll go round and round and round, faster and faster, following the hermanas' rhythm until the song ends and they are dizzy as drunk. Their feet hurting and blood-stained from stepping barefoot and carelessly on the floor while dancing. I walk towards them. When the song ends, I break the circle and cross to the beacon. The spring girls bring me a torch. My heart races. Not even the nocturnal birds and insects dare break the silence. I look around, and there she is. As promised, Amelia is dressed in the weird clothes of the city people, leaning towards the Casa Grande's wall. I could laugh at how ridiculous she looks with trousers and a black t-shirt, red lips and eyelids as black as if she had rubbed coal on them. But the truth is, she looks tantalizing and dreadful, just as I do now. She's been our siren's song. There are some men with her. I can't count how many, but I'm sure they will do. We only need a handful. Hiding themselves poorly behind their outside world recording devices, still no one notices them. The festival has them bewitched already. Amelia nods, and I throw the torch in. Heat strikes me immediately. The field turns golden. I walk towards the abuela throne, a high wooden squared chair from where I'm supposed to contemplate the sowing. The madres look at me. The fire reflects in their eyes as they wait for my signal. I clap, and they all cover their faces with the ceremony clothes, as usual, before letting their robes fall to the floor. They would stay put, waiting for the night to fall over their bodies, waiting for the touch of many hands. They would, if this was any other San Juan, not this one. The padres strip off their robes too. Some already proudly show their erections, and a couple of the younger ones can't resist their urges and start masturbating in the heat of the fire. There are still a few minutes to go before the sun has completely set, but they are already lost in their lust, focused on the madres, distracted, vulnerable. The hermanas take their places behind the padres. They are supposed to be mere witnesses, silent caryatids holding together the remains of the old world, strong cold stones to build the new one upon. But tonight, I have turned them into something else, something far more useful. Today, I have put sickles in their hands, hope in their hearts. I have turned them into reapers. Tonight we do not sow children. Tonight we sow blood, and we shall reap freedom and future. I yell the call of our people to the blackened summer sky until there's no air left in my lungs. The hermanas slit the throats of the padres. Not a single one of them fails or shows any doubts. It had to be done. Taken by surprise, the padres never stood a chance. Their moans and labored breaths don't last long. Blood covers the circle around the bonfire. The madres take their blindfolds off and dip them in the blood. They show the different stains proudly. These clothes will adorn their houses now and be honored symbols of their new lineage. So I have said. Amelia was right. The filming crew hasn't batted an eye at the reaping of our padres. They haven't even uttered a word. Yes, sis, good job. They will do. The spring girls bring me the urn with Abuela's heart covered with honey. They have done a truly lousy job taking it out. It's all cut wrong and torn, but it's okay. I don't intend to eat the damned thing. I never did. Tonight, a new world is struggling to be born. I scream, holding the heart in my hands over my head for all to see. Only because the old one refuses to die. Tonight, we burnt the old to let in the new. I walk down from the chair towards the fire. I make sure I step on the corpses of the padres. They are still warm, and some are twitchy. Without a word, I throw the late Abuela's heart into the flames. The madres and the hermanas cheer me on as I do so. It's done. Half of it. We all turn now to the strangers foolish enough to follow Amelia to us, the ones frozen both by fear and excitement. We have put on a good show for them, haven't we, sis? Amelia was the perfect bait. Vulnerable, scarred. She's always been the best at faking tears. The survivor of a cult, willing to expose our practices to the outside world, willing to give those strangers the opportunity of a lifetime. But it's them who are going to be our opportunity, our new blood, our future, at least until we make sure our madres are with child. Then we'll enrich our crops with their flesh, too. So I have said.
That was J.V. Gachs' San Juan's Sowing, as read by Maurine McLean. Maurine McLean is an Austin musician, plucking the bass with acoustic bands, the Therapy Sisters, and a proper cup of coffee. She earns her keep in the courtroom interpreting real-life terrifying tales from Spanish to English. Thank you, Maurine. Well, children of the night, the hour is late, and we've run out of tales to tell. For now. Tales to Terrify is made possible by the tremendous generosity of our supporters on Patreon and PayPal. Incredible fans like Lestle Baxter, Amanda Carrillo, Amanda Gottfried, and Orion D, Hegre, whose generous support keeps these lights on and flickering ominously. If you're not a supporter, head over to patreon.com/tales to terrify. you'll find all kinds of perks, like ad-free episodes, bonus content, and one-of-a-kind collectibles. Every dollar goes back into this show, and we appreciate your support so much. Want another way to support the show that doesn't cost you a cent? Head over to Podchaser, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and drop us a 5-star review. You'll not only put an unnaturally wide smile on our faces, but help new listeners discover our terrifying tales too. You can show your love of the show out in the world with some Tales to Terrify merch. TalesToTerrify.com/merch will take you to our TeePublic store, where we've got a great collection of creepy custom and curated designs. Tales to Terrify is produced by Seth Williams, Meredith Morgenstern, Andrew Gibson, Krystal Hammond, Spencer Disparty, and myself, Drew Sebastini, with original theme by Nebulous Entertainment. Tales to Terrify is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Join us again next week as we seek revenge amidst the dead with more Tales to Terrify.